So tonight we're going to continue on the same subject as I kind of been on, because I can't get away from it. But I'm going to talk about the power of patient endurance. And, I read a lot in James 1, verse 3 and 4. But in the Passion Translation, it says, For you know that when your faith is tested, it stirred up in you the power of endurance. And then as your endurance grows even stronger, it will release perfection into every part of your being until there is nothing missing and nothing lacking. And when I saw that power of endurance, I started meditating on that. I thought, that's a powerful word. It's the power of endurance. Well, we know that word in there, in the Amplified, it says, be assured and understand that the trial and proving of your faith brings out endurance, steadfastness, and patience. The King James says, we know that the testing of our faith produces patience. Well, that Greek word, of course, I'll probably murder it, but it's hypomone, and it means cheerful, hopeful endurance. Okay, so endurance by itself is the ability to withstand hardship and adversity. But I like the word patience, because patience is to have endurance, but it means to have it with calmly and without complaint. Because we can have endurance and we can overcome the hardships, but it's really easy to fall into the complaining as we go. But that patience it brings it up to that next level, and it's with doing it calmly and without complaint. To me, patience means staying the same, no matter what the circumstances are. It's no longer riding that roller coaster of emotions, up one day, down the next, or up 1 minute and down the next. It's getting to the point of keeping your emotions, your faith, your hope, all level. Okay? So when James 1:3 says, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience, but then it says, but let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. Again, in the Passion, it says, and when your endurance grows even stronger, it releases perfection into every part of your being until there's nothing missing, nothing lacking. It's that shalom. It's that the power of patience is that it leads to perfection in you. It leads to shalom, nothing missing, nothing lacking. And whatever we overcome, we own. When you are healed of some affliction, you have victory over that. You can pray over anybody else and they'll be healed. It's what you've overcome, you own. And so it's that working of that patience, working of that endurance. Now we have to remember, again, that in the kingdom, overcoming looks different than it does on earth. Okay? Overcoming in the kingdom is wrapped up in worship, in heart attitude, in faith, in patience. It doesn't necessarily mean winning every time. I mean, think about it. Martyrs are given a special place and position in heaven. According to Revelation 6:9, the martyrs are underneath the altar of God. That's a special place in heaven. And yet, if you lose your life, do you think that you've won? No. On earth, no. In heaven, yeah. You're giving up your life. You're giving up everything. So look how the writer of Hebrews describes some of those who overcomes. In Hebrews 11, it's we know it as a faith chapter, but Hebrews 11, starting at verse 33, it says, who through faith subdued kingdoms, worked righteousness, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the violence of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, out of weakness were made strong, became valiant in battle, turned to flight the armies of aliens. Women received their dead raised to life again. That all sounds really good, right? But then it goes on. Verse 35. Others were tortured, not accepting deliverance, that they might obtain a better resurrection. Still others had trials of mockings and scourgings, yes, and of chains and imprisonments. They were stoned. They were sawn in two, were tempted, were slain with the sword. They wandered about in sheepskins and goatskins, being destitute, afflicted, tormented, of whom the world is not worthy. They wandered in deserts and mountains and dens and caves of the earth. That doesn't sound very much like overcoming. And yet, in the scriptures, because they were faithful, they overcome. It says, and all these, in verse 39, and all these, having obtained a good testimony through faith, did not receive the promise. So you think, well, how are they overcomers if they didn't receive the promise? Of course, we know it goes on to say that God reserved that promise for even those in this generation, our generation. But they received a good testimony through faith. What was that good testimony? That they overcame. How did they overcome? By living life, by keeping their faith, by going day by day, even through the trials, even through the hardships, even if they're naked, even if they're in sheepskins, even if they're tortured, they maintain their faith. That's overcoming. Okay? And they were viewed as overcomers. So we have to understand what we might think is overcoming on earth. We need to change our view into kingdom. Kingdom eyesight is different than earthly eyesight. And we need to start paying attention to that, because especially if we're walking in kingdom, we need to recognize that we're overcoming, or we're not, whatever the case may be, right? Okay, but they obtained their good testimony through faith. Now, there's a difference between believers and overcomers. Okay, a believer holds to what they believe is true. We know that. But an overcomer takes that belief to another level by acting on it, by walking it out no matter what. Okay, think of it this way. When two people stand in front of the preacher or the judge to get married, and they say their vows, they both believe without a shadow of a doubt that they're going to live the rest of their lives together, that they will always be in love, that there will always be a twinkle in each other's eye, everything will be perfect, the honeymoon will last forever, right? But what happens? Troubles come, life happens, day-to-day happens, they, quote-unquote, fall out of love, fall in love with somebody else, whatever, and divorce enters the scene. They both believed the same thing. But overcomers not only believe in the vows, but they live them every day. Okay, overcomers make that choice, and they walk through it, and they're determined that they're going to succeed no matter what. And when troubles come, it makes them stronger together than apart, because they have one mind. They're going to overcome this. We believe that this is what God's having us for us, and we're acting on it. You see the difference? Does it make sense? Okay? So when two overcomers are in a marriage, that marriage has no choice but to work. Okay? Ecclesiastes 4, starting at verse 9 and 10 says, 2 are better than one, because they have good reward for their labor. For if they fall, one will lift up his companion. But woe to him who's alone when he falls, for he has no one to help him up. So if one's an overcomer and one's just a believer, it's a little bit tougher. Okay, because a lot of times it's a lot easier for one to pull down the other one than to pull one up. Okay, we know that. So that's why when Paul talks about being unequally yoked in 2 Corinthians 6, he's talking about partners and all this, but it's more than just a Christian and an unbeliever. It's more than just a believer and a believer. It's partners that need to have the same values, the same commitments, so that they can overcome anything. So when you're looking for a life partner, when you're looking for a business partner, when you're looking for somebody to walk the road together, you don't want just somebody that says, oh, I'm a believer. You want somebody that you don't want to sit down and say, now, how do you believe? And what do you do when when it gets tough? And what are your commitments? What are your values? Because those, when you get two believers together, or two overcomers together, nobody can stand in the way. One to put 1,000 to flight, 2, 10,000. Okay, but it's not just believing; it's acting on that belief. Does that make sense? Okay, so, but we also have to understand that in a partnership, like in a marriage, if one's a believer, one's not, and it all disintegrates, each one is judged individually according to the intent of the heart. Okay? So, yeah, my life is affected by Steve, and Steve's life is affected by mine. But I'm going to be judged on if I'm an overcomer by the intent of my heart. Okay? I mean, he might be a strong enough overcomer to keep us together. But if I'm not an overcomer, I won't be judged as an overcomer. Does that make sense? Am I making? Okay. We have to be overcomers in ourselves. We have to make that decision in ourselves. When the Lord was speaking to the 7 churches in Revelations, you can see a pattern in that, And he would say, "This is who I am." And then he would commend the churches, and then he would warn them, and then he would go on. For example, to the church of Ephesus, and this is the first church in Ephesians. It's to the church of Ephesus, but this is Revelation 2, starting at verse 2. It says, "I know your works, your labor, your patience, and that you cannot bear those who are evil. You have tested those who say they're apostles and are not, have found them to be liars. You have persevered and have patience and labored for my name's sake, and have not become weary." Okay, so he's talking to believers. He said, you've done all these good things. "Nevertheless, I have this against you." So here's where he's saying, this is your warning. "You have left your first love. You've forgotten your relationship with me." You're doing all the stuff that you're judging all this stuff, but you've forgotten your relationship. It says, "Remember, therefore, from where you have fallen, repent, do the first works, or else I will come to you quickly and remove your lampstand from its place, unless you repent." So he's talking to believers. And he's like, look, you're doing what you're supposed to do. You're persevering. You're being an overcomer in the sense of the word, but you've forgotten your first love. You've forgotten our relationship. So go back, repent. Okay, so he warns them. And in other places, he warns them to be faithful to the death, to hold fast. It goes on through the 7 churches. So there's that. Even as believers, to be overcomers, we have to maintain that relationship. We have to continue to maintain our assignment, do what we're supposed to be doing, but maintain that relationship. But then at the end of each exhortation, he'll say, "He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. To him who overcomes." And then he gives a specific reward. Okay, so he's actually separating in these exhortations. He separates. So these are the believers, and this is what the warning is, and this is what you're doing, and this is what's good. Now, if you have ear to hear what the Spirit says, listen. And then to him who overcomes. Not everybody's an overcomer. Okay, and not everybody will get every one of these rewards, because each reward is specific according to what they're doing. So we need to have ears to hear. We need to hear what the Lord is saying to us. And overcomers endure day by day to the finish. And what they overcome, they rule. Which is why when you see in the churches, you see specifically what they're doing, whether they're overcoming Jezebel, whether they're, whatever they're doing. And these are the rewards for those that have overcome this situation. And so when in our lives, if we're overcoming day by day, then there's specific rewards. Okay? But we have to do this day by day. Day by day. When Steve started in insurance in 1984, he tells a story, because this is before my time. But he'd say he would look around and he saw all the other agents and how many left because it was just too tough. And he said, all I have to do is stick around and I'll be the king. Because they'll all leave and I'll get all the call-ins and all the leads and all the opportunities. Because I'll be the last man standing. Right? Is that what you said? Okay. 38 years later, this is what's happening. I mean, every week they'll call him multiple times to give him a lead, to give him a call-in, whatever. Why? Because he's the only one that understands how to do some of this stuff. All these newbies coming up, they don't understand all this stuff. Why? Because he persevered day by day, no matter whether it was tough or not, no matter if he wanted to or not. There's times when he said, let me go back to cement work. But it was that day by day enduring that he became the last man standing. And now he's reaping the reward for that. So it's that day by day being faithful. Okay? So how do we learn to have this patient endurance? Most of it, a lot of it, is our mindset. You know, like Joyce Meyer says, the battlefield of the mind. It's what we hear, what we think about. Okay? There's a show on TV called Alone. Steve and I like to watch it. It's a reality show. And usually it's like 10 people get dropped off in some remote location, usually somewhere it really gets cold and not a lot of food and all this stuff. And they have to be by themselves. They spread them out over these islands or whatever, so they don't see anybody else for however long they're out there. And they have to find their own shelter. They have to find their own food. They have to exist. You know, sometimes it's for a certain amount of time, and sometimes it's if they're the last one out there, okay? Last man standing. But what's so interesting is that most of them don't give up because of lack of food or the elements. It's because of their mental state. They start missing their families. We'll watch them and they'll start saying, well, you know, my son his birthday is such and such, and I'm starting to miss it. We'll say, oh, he's out. Because as soon as they start as soon as they start losing the sight of their goal, they're gone. They're out, you know. So they miss their family, forgetting what they're doing. They're getting their eyes on something else. Okay? One guy, he was like, he just amazed me because he made this really awesome shelter. He had all these inventions. He made running water in his place. I mean, he had all these games to keep him occupied. He had plenty of food. He had, food and then storage food. I mean, he had enough to last him for a year. No problem. And he bugged out. And the reason is he got bored. He lost sight of the goal. He gave up $1 million because he got bored. Okay? So it was just because he lost sight of what he was supposed to be doing. He lost sight of his assignment. So to endure hardships, you have to understand what your assignment is very clearly, because you got to remind yourself day by day, what is that assignment? What is that goal? Why am I doing what I'm doing? There's a reason I come to the office every day. You know, there's times I don't want to come to the office. But why do I come to the office? Because it's my assignment. And I know if I don't, I'm not doing my assignment. You know, it's that day by day doing what we're supposed to be doing. In Hebrews 12, verse 2, it says, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Jesus himself had to keep that goal in mind. For the joy that was set before him, he endured the cross. Because he had his eye on the goal, because he had his eye on that assignment, he was able to endure what he had to go through so that we can have salvation and that we can be sitting in this room today. Okay, but you have to keep that in front of us. Okay, God's made us a kingdom of kings, but that title doesn't always make you a king. It's what you do with that title. Okay, it's what you're going to do. It's the same as being an overcomer. God has equipped every one of us to be overcomers. But it's what are we going to do with that? Are we going to do the assignment or are we not? It's up to us. You have to put action with it. It's how you walk it out, how you esteem it. Now, not everybody is going to understand your assignment. And not everybody will esteem it the same way. And not everybody will enable you to do the assignment. Sometimes you have to stand up and say, no, I have an assignment and I've got to do it. No, this is my appointment and I've got to do it. Yeah, I'd much rather go play. But no, I've got to stand on my assignment. And so you are the one that has to make that decision. Okay, because believe me, there's enough distractions in this world that we don't need anybody to help us, but the enemy will definitely help us be distracted. So we have to make that choice. Habakkuk 2 verse 1 says, I will stand my watch, and set myself on the rampart and watch to see what he will say to me. He didn't say, the king's going to set me on my watch, and my wife's going to bring me to my job. No, he said, I will stand on my watch. I will set myself on the rampart. I'll position myself. I'll, plant my feet where I'm to be, where I'm supposed to be. And I'm going to watch to see what he's going to say to me. You have to do it. It's up to you, because you're the one that's going to be judged for it. You have your assignment. Look at the the monarchy in England fascinates me. I just like to watch all the stuff, all the coronation right now. It was amazing, all the traditions and all the stuff that they did. But if you think about that, if you think about their line, Queen Elizabeth's uncle was King Edward VIII. He was a king, but he abdicated his throne in order to marry an American divorcee. Okay? So he was king. I mean, he had been crowned, he was king. But he chose not to complete that assignment. And because of that, Elizabeth's father, his brother, George VI, became king. Okay? 15 years later, Elizabeth became queen. Elizabeth was never to be queen. Edward VIII's line was supposed to be in the throne, in line of the throne. He chose not to fulfill his assignment. Does that make sense? Okay, but when Queen Elizabeth was now set into position to be queen, if you watch her, of course we know, most of us, she had been the queen all of our lives. She was on her throne for 70 years. She was the longest reigning queen or monarch, I guess. But when she took her position, it was with all seriousness. She had honor with it. She had awe with it. She took it with everything in her, irregardless of her family, of what everybody else said. She was strong in her assignment. This is her assignment, and she honored that, and you could tell it in her life. Whatever else, I don't know all the good, the bad, and ugly, but if you look at in the public eye, she was a great queen because she respected her position, and she did it to the best of her ability. So that was Queen. Then again, she was never supposed to be on the throne, but she took that responsibility very seriously. So now then she has four kids, right? Charles is now king. But people have no love for him. Why? Because he did not honor his house. So he was just loyal to his wife, Diana. How can he be loyal now? And people don't trust him. Okay? So that's the king now. Andrew, he's just a disgrace. We won't go there. Edward, he maintains a really low profile, but he runs his family, his business really well and with honor. If you look at the family, they walk with honor. Anne is one who stepped into her title. She served her mother. She has more assignments than anybody else. She has more engagements than anybody else. She's done her princess duty very, very well. But she really shone during the last days of Elizabeth. If you ever watched that stuff, she was very caring, very attentive daughter, but she showed honor. And during the funeral, she was there at all times with regal honor. And it was beautiful. I don't know if you saw it. It was just beautiful. Okay, so here's 4 kids, but they all treated their title differently. Okay? Was the best one on the throne? Don't ask me that. But as it is, we go by line of succession, so it doesn't matter. But if you look at that, they treated their title and treated their assignments differently. Some with disdain and some with great honor. Okay? So, and God will judge that. Now you have, Charles has 2 sons, William and Harry. Very, very distinct. You know, they were very close growing up, but now William has embraced his title and his position, and with honor, and Harry has rejected it. Okay? They both had the same choice. Yeah, William was in line of the throne, but Harry was still a prince, and he still had assignments to do. So, do you see what I'm saying? So you have those, they all have the same opportunity, because they all had, they were born in the same family, they had the same titles, but how did they embrace that assignment? And how they embrace that assignment is how their history is. Okay? And it's the same with us. Title doesn't cause us to be successful. The title doesn't cause us to be an overcomer or not an overcomer. It doesn't cause us to sit at the right hand of the Father. It doesn't do that. It's our mindset. We're not seated at the right hand of God because it's our choice. It's because God seated us there. Okay? But then how are we going to take that position? How many people just say, yeah, I'm seated at the right hand of God, and they take it lightly and go on? And how many people set that, I'm going to say, I'm seated at the right hand of God, so I'm going to rule from there. And they rule from heaven down instead of earth up. It's how you take that position and utilize that position is what ends up being important. Does that make sense? We all have the same opportunity. God placed us all there together. But how are you going to use it? What is your assignment in that position? It's how you esteem it. Patient endurance is a day-by-day decision. Day by day. Because sometimes it's easier than others. Okay? Look at Jacob. Jacob worked for 7 years for Rachel. In Genesis 29:20, it says, he served 7 years, and they seemed only a few days to him because of the love he had for her. Okay? It was just no endurance. It's just a few days. Because, why? He had her in sight. If I can work 7 years, she's going to be my wife. He had that goal in sight. It just seemed like a few days because he knew what he was going to do, and he was focused. But now the second 7 years, because he already had Rachel and Leah at that point, and he was just working it off, he had to endure it. Okay? It wasn't just seemed like a few days at that point. It seemed like 7 full years. Probably at that point it seemed like 14 years. But, it was an endurance because he already had the prize. Now he just had to work it off. So he had to endure it. And as soon as this time was up, he came to Laban and he said, I'm out of here. I want to take my kids and go. And Laban talked him into staying. And he said, I'll pay you if you'll stay, But then how did Jacob make his flock strong? Laban gave him the weak stuff. He gave him the leftovers. He gave him the spotted, the streaked, the striped. And Jacob, knowing that what you set your eyes on is what you get. So what did he do? He took those branches and he made stripes and spots and streaks. And he put it in front of those animals. Now, I don't know how scientific that is. Probably more miraculous than scientific. But it's a principle. What you set your eyes on is what you're going to get. Your assignment is where you're at, what your goal is. So the main component, or a main component of endurance, is our mindset. Day by day, eye on the prize, doing the assignment, even if it seems like an act of futility, you do it anyway, because that is your faithfulness. So remember, it's not necessarily the outcome that makes us overcomers. It's the acts of faith through the obstacles and the adversities. Okay, God doesn't judge us on the outcome. He judges us on how we're walking it out. Okay, I found at least 9 parables where Jesus alluded to the overcomer, to the faithful one. And I'm just going to read one, because not all 9, but one. But if you look in Luke 12, starting at verse 42, so Luke 12:42, and the Lord said, "Who then is that faithful and wise steward, whom his master will make ruler over his household, to give them their portion of food in due season? Blessed is that servant whom his master will find doing so when he comes. Truly, I say to you that he will make him ruler over all that he has." So he's going to make him a ruler over everyone if he finds that servant faithful, doing what he's supposed to do when he comes back. Verse 45, "But if that servant says in his heart, 'My master is delaying his coming,' and begins to beat the male and female servants, and to eat and drink and be drunk, the master of that servant will come on a day when he's not looking for him, and at an hour when he is not aware, and will cut him in two and appoint him his portion with the unbelievers. And that servant who knew his master's will and did not prepare himself or do according to his will shall be beaten with many stripes. But he who did not know, yet committed things deserving of stripes, shall be beaten with few." Okay, so there's these different levels of faithfulness. One who knew what he was supposed to do. He did it faithfully. He did it with honor. He kept the food on the table, and the master rewarded him greatly. And then you got the one that says, he's not coming anytime soon. I can be the Lord. I can be the master. I can do what I want to do. I can go party, have fun. And when he's not thinking about it, the master comes. And what it says, he's cut in two. And he appointed him his portion with the unbelievers. Okay, so it's not a light thing. Okay, and then if the servant knew his father's will, he knew the assignment, and he did not prepare himself or do the assignment, will be beaten with many stripes. So, I mean, you got someone who just doesn't care and just wants to do his own thing. You got somebody who knows God's will. He's planning on doing it at some point. He just hasn't prepared in the meantime. He's going to get some stripes. And then he who doesn't know, he doesn't understand God's will, hasn't been taught, whatever, he'll just be beaten with a few, but he'll still be beaten. Okay? So, that consistent faithfulness, we have to have what? Ears to hear. We have to know what God's will is, what our assignment is, what our goal is, and then do it. Not just say, I know my assignment, I'll do it in the sweet by and by. Okay? We know, at Spirit of Life, we know what our assignment is. We have prophecies. We have books of prophecies of what our assignment is. Okay? Is it time? No. Knowing the timing is 80% of the prophecy. But in applying ourselves, because it says, he who did not prepare, he knew his master's will and did not prepare himself. Well, if it's not time, prepare yourself. If you know that God's will is to become a doctor, prepare yourself. You're not going to say, I'm a doctor because God's will is for me to be a doctor. I'm going to show up at the hospital tomorrow and say, I'm a doctor because that's what God's will for me is. They're going to look at you and laugh. Okay, you got to go back to school and you got to prepare yourself. So there's times for preparation, but if you're not even preparing yourself during those times, that's when the Lord says, this is not what needs to happen. So assignments partially are preparing ourselves and partially doing it. But it's that day by day, consistent faithfulness. Day by day. Does that make sense? Okay? So, and then another key is to know the basis of your assignment. What is your assignment? Why do you know this is your assignment? Is it a word of promise that God's given you? Is it a prophecy? Is it an experience that you have? Is it a knowing that you have? What is it how is it that you know this is your assignment? Because you got to have something solid to stand on. You can't say, well, I think my assignment for my life is this. And you start there, it's going to be really wishy-washy because the first time the wind comes, you're going to be blown, well, maybe this isn't my assignment, maybe this is my assignment. And the next wind comes, well, maybe not this one, maybe this one. Okay? You have to have a grounding. What is your assignment and why do you know that's your assignment? Okay? And then you have to keep it in front of you all the time. Hold on to it. That's why we have the prophecies that we hold on to. That's when we read them. We talk to each other about it often. Well, no, this is what the Lord said on this situation. This is what the Lord said this situation. Or I remember hearing something, what is it? And we talk about it to each other often. Why? To keep it in front of us. Okay? Look at the parable, it's called the parable of the unjust judge, in Luke 18, starting at verse 2. It says, There was in a certain city a judge who did not fear God, nor regard man. Now there came a widow in that city, and she came to him, saying, Get justice for me from my adversary. And he would not for a while, but afterward he said within himself, Though I do not fear God, nor regard man, yet because this widow troubles me, I will avenge her, lest by her continual coming she weary me. And then the Lord said, Hear what the unjust judge said. And shall God not avenge his own elect who cry out day and night to him, though he bears long with them? I tell you, he will avenge them speedily. Nevertheless, when the Son of Man comes, will he really find faith on the earth? So, that last sentence tells us this whole thing is about faith. Okay? But let's look at the judge. It says he didn't care about God. He didn't care about man. He didn't care about the law. It's kind of like the judges we have now. They don't care about the law. They're going to do their own thing. Okay? Nothing is unjust. Every time that woman came before him, he was ruling against the law. He was unjust. Okay? But the widow said, Get justice for me from my adversary. What was the key there? She knew the law, and she knew her rights. She knew why she was coming in front of that judge. And she knew that she had a right to be there, and she knew that that judge was supposed to judge correctly. Okay? She knew the law. She was not just arbitrarily coming with a request. It was just not just something she pulled out of the hat or something she wished she might, she wished she may. It was the law. Okay? And he was disregarding the law. The law was on her side. The judge was disregarding it. Okay? If she was without basis, if the judge if the law wasn't on her side, the judge, being an unjust judge, he wouldn't have allowed her to continue to trouble him. He would have thrown her in prison or worse. Okay? Why mess with her? She didn't have a case. She didn't have a basis. Why don't even trouble me anymore? But she had the law on her side. She knew what she was holding on to. She knew that promise she was holding on to. Okay? And because she had the law on her side, the judge finally had to help her. Okay? He didn't say, I'm just going to do it because, yes, you don't weary me. But it's because I'll avenge her because her continual coming. Well, why is she going to continually come? Because she knew the law was on her side. She knew what she was standing on. She had faith to believe that this is the law. The law is true. So I have something that I'm coming, and she and I keep coming. Okay, and that's why he's like, she's going to keep coming because she has the law on her side. I might as well just say, okay, here we go. Okay? So the judge finally helped her. She overcame because she knew her rights. And the power of endurance for her rewarded her with success. Okay? She had the promise, but then she kept coming and standing on the promise. She kept coming and saying, no, this is what the promise is. She kept coming and saying, this is my right. This is what I'm due. This is what God's told me. This is what I need. I'm not just arbitrarily saying, I wish this, This is in writing. This is my contract. This is my covenant. And she kept coming by faith. And that was her success. But the Lord ends this by saying, won't the Lord himself not avenge his own elect who cry out day and night to him, though he bears long with them? I always thought about, why does he bear long? Just do it quick, Why have we been waiting for 5 years, 7 years? Why? Okay. Because God promises to answer, but he also knows that the trying of our faith produces patience. Faith is not what produces perfection. Patience produces perfection. So just because we stand on faith, if God gave us that answer immediately every single time, and we didn't have to press in for it, and we didn't have to endure for it, and we didn't have to believe for it, then where would our patience be? It would be like, okay, Lord, you're my candy machine. Here's the promise. This is how you're supposed to ask. So here's my request, and God gives it to you, and it's instant gratification. Here we go. Okay? But he bears long because it's the trying of our faith worketh that patience. So sometimes he says, let's see how much you're really going to believe me for this. Let's see how much you're really going to endure. Let's see you be an overcomer. If you get it immediately every time, how are you going to overcome? You're not overcoming anything. You're overcoming the microwave society, But it's that, Steve likes to make the long 5-hour, 8-hour roast. Usually overnight we can smell it all night long. Okay? Now, would it be easier to make it the quick way? Yeah. But it's that long process that gets the good juices and that gets the good flavor. Okay, but it's that same thing. We have to understand that the trying of our faith work is perfection in us. And we have to be, that's why James said, count it all joy when diverse temptations come. Not because you're going through a hard time, but because I have an opportunity to be an overcomer. I have an opportunity to become perfect in God. I have an opportunity to learn that shalom in Christ. I have the opportunity to become strong. Okay? So it becomes an attitude of the heart. Okay? Because you can endure with complaining, or you can endure with patience, calmly, and without complaint. And then Jesus said, but nevertheless, when the Son of Man comes, will he really find faith on the earth? Okay, will he really find that consistent faith? We as Americans, we are definitely a microwave society. We like things immediately. We think things need to be immediate. But it doesn't always work that way in the kingdom. And remember, kingdom is out of time. So what seems like just a blink for them might be 40 years for us. So we have to be able to be consistently standing on faith so that we can consistently be overcomers. Okay? 1 Corinthians 16:13, Paul is giving his final exhortations to the church in Corinth in the first letter. And he says, watch, stand fast in the faith, be brave, be strong. Okay? So he said, watch, stand fast in the faith, be brave, and be strong. So that consistency, that patient endurance is just standing fast. We overcome by what? The blood of the Lamb, by the word of our testimony. And because they did not love their life even unto the death. Sometimes it's that loving our life to the death that's the hard part. But it's what is our assignment, and what are we going to do with that? And is that assignment that God gave us worth more than my life? Is that assignment that God gave me worth more than my comfort? Is it worth more to me than instant gratification? If my Father has given me an assignment, and this goes for each one of you, how are you going to esteem it? How are you going to honor that? Is it just something that it's an assignment and go on? Because some assignments are short. You know, it's a quick. Let's go give Connie one word. Okay, I'll go give Connie one word. My assignment's done. Okay, but some assignments take longer, and some assignments are for a lifetime. But either every assignment that's from the Father should be given the esteem and the honor that's due, because God Himself has taken the time to place that on us and to write that in our scroll. And then Revelations 21:7 says, "He who overcomes shall inherit all things, and I will be his God, and he shall be my son." And to me, that's the ultimate reward. It's inheriting everything, but God will be my God, and I will be his son. I will be his child because I've overcome. And that is our ultimate goal, our ultimate prizes. So the Lord keeps saying over and over, we need to walk this out. We need to endure to the end. We need to finish well. We need to keep that goal in front of us and not lose sight of it. And right now, most of us we're coming to an end of a hard assignment. We're about to step into another assignment. How we finish this assignment, because a lot of times when we get to the end, we kind of start breathing or start losing sight of it or start looking at the next assignment and don't necessarily finish well. We finish haphazardly because we're on to the next thing. No, we need to finish the assignment well, because going into the next assignment, we need to start it well. So we need to finish this one well, start the next one well, and then carry that one on through to where God wants us to go. Amen.